I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Brothers and sisters, welcome to Quran study. We are going to read from chapter 4, verse 95, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. The title is Higher Ranks for the Strivers. Not equal are the sedentary among the believers who are not handicapped, and those who strive in the cause of God with their money and their lives. God exalts the strivers with their money and their lives above the sedentary. For both, God promises salvation, but God exalts the strivers for the sedentary with a great recompense. The higher ranks come from Him, as well as forgiveness and mercy. God is forgiver, most merciful. Of course, there is a difference between someone who is striving more in the cause of God than someone who strives less. And the teachings that we have learned from the Quran is basically that the more you follow God's commandments, the more you do them, the more you strive in the cause of God, the bigger your soul becomes, right? Eventually, this is the system that God has created. God sent us to this earth so um, we could show our real identity, right? Our real qualities, and God tests us to show us real qualities. And if someone strives more in the cause of God, that means that person is growing his own soul more. It makes it bigger. That is the teaching that God has taught us throughout the Quran, of course. And here says God, of course, that there is a higher rank if you strive more in the cause of God. So this means that someone who lives in this world gets tested and eventually makes it to heaven. Um, um, but if you have someone else who strives more in the cause of God, does more, gives more charity, remembers God more often, is more righteous, for example, that person will have a higher rank, and God is the one who knows exactly the ranks, right? And He is basically the one who gives these ranks. And God is, of course, most merciful, but He is also most just. So He knows exactly who deserves to get these high ranks, and He knows, to test the people with their different types of um, with these different types of ways, right? Because you would have some people, if you would test them with money, money wouldn't maybe a big issue for them or a problem, so they can deal with that test. But if you test them with their children, then it's possible that that's going to be more difficult to go through. And God designed the system in this world in a way that the real qualities of each soul comes into light. 97. Apathy condemned. Those whose lives are terminated by the angels while in a state of wronging their souls, the angels will ask them, "What was the matter with you?" They will say, "We were oppressed on earth." They will say, "Was God's earth not spacious enough for you to emigrate therein? For these, the final abode is hell and a miserable destiny. Exempt are the weak men, women, and children who do not possess the strength nor the means to find a way out. These may be pardoned by God. God is pardoner, forgiver. So, when you live in a place which makes it very difficult for you to live as a submitter to follow the commandments of God, if you are not powerful enough to take power and then make sure that there is freedom in that country, if that's not the case, and if you're not weak, for example, God says that you need to emigrate to another place. And here we can see an example where the angels are asking those people why they didn't emigrate to another place where and it says, "Earth was God's earth not spacious enough for you to emigrate therein." Of course, we see a lot of people that they are bound uh, to their lands, right? And I would understand that someone uh, doesn't want to. You don't want to leave your houses, right? If there are problems or something, you want to keep your house. You want to keep living in the country that you want to live in. That's really understandable. But if you have a difficulty practicing your religion like God has commanded it, and if you have a way out, you should emigrate. Like you should go to another place which is safer. If the possibility is there, you definitely need to do that. And if you don't, and if you can't do that, of course, then God pardons you, right? Because He knows what you can and what you can't. But if the possibility is there that you can leave the country, you can go to another place where you can practice your religion easily and freely, then that is something that a believer definitely needs to do. This is what I understand from this, because like the most important thing for a believer should be the ability to practice his or her religion, right? That should be the most important thing in our cases. And if we live in a country where that becomes very difficult or almost impossible, and we have the ability and the possibility to emigrate, God is telling us to do that. We need to emigrate to a better place. And from the example of Prophet Muhammad, he emigrated from Mecca to Medina, right? That's also a good example where what eventually happened is they were weak in Mecca, and they couldn't really fight back to the with the enemy, right? And they emigrated, and eventually, after emigrating to Medina, they became stronger. They had like more people joining the religion, and they eventually ended up victorious there. And God promises this in the Quran. So you can't say, oh, okay, like I could have emigrated, but I didn't want to leave my house behind. I still wanted to live in my city or in my own country. Like you can't say this. If there is a possibility that you can move out and you can go to a better place where you can practice your religion, and that should be also the reason, right, for your reason of for the emigration, right? Um, like the act that you're doing is supposed to be accordance with the reason should be to strive in the cause of God, to be able to practice your religion. And God says these may be pardoned by God. God is pardoner, forgiver. Of course, if you are not capable of doing that, and God knows that, He will forgive you and He will pardon you. Anyone who emigrates in the cause of God will find on earth great bounties and richness. Anyone who gives up his home, emigrates to God and his messenger, then death catches up with him. His recompense is reserved with God. God is forgiver, most merciful. And here God explains, right? He says, if you do that, and the reason why you emigrate, it needs to be in the cause of God, right? That needs to be the reason, of course. And anyone who emigrates in the cause of God will find on earth great bounties and richness. This is a promise of God. So anyone who is in that position needs to put his trust in God, knowing that if that person emigrates in the cause of God, the promise is bounties and richness. And anyone who gives up his home and migrates to God and his messenger, then death catches up with him. Like, even if that catches up with that person, his recompense is reserved with God. So eventually, even if you die, God is going to, help you out, and you are going to end up in heaven. So, and this has all to do with your intentions, right? Your intention is to emigrate in the cause of God because you want to practice your religion, um, and you give up your home, you give up your land, maybe, uh, but you do that because of God, and God knows this, and God will protect you. And even if you die, God says that the recompense is reserved with Him. When you travel during war, you commit no error by shortening your contact prayer salat. If you fear that the disbelievers may attack you, surely the disbelievers are your ardent enemies. So, and during war, when you travel during war, you commit no error by shortening your contact prayers. Like from this, what I understand is you have, of course, the rakats, right, of salat. So, for example, instead of doing 4 rakats, you could do 2 rakats, 3 rakats, or even 1 rakat. That is what I understand from this verse. Um, like I have heard people say that okay, you should do only one rakat, but you know the verse says you commit no error by shortening your contact prayers. So if it's 4 rakat and you are able to do 3 or 2, that's also shortening from my perspective. Like this is what I understand from it. And God willing, we can talk about this part after the study. Um, but this is what I understand. Like because at that time it's very hectic. You're in war, and anything can happen at every moment. And the enemy is there. They want to attack you and kill you. So you need to be cautious, of course. But you know, God teaches us that while you are in war, while fighting, this doesn't give you the excuse not to do your prayers. So even when we are doing when we are at war, we still need to do our contact prayer salat. And, you know, God has made the religion easy for us, right? And He knows exactly what we can and what we can't. That's why He's telling us that in the times of war, like we commit no error by shortening it. And you know, this is a way of because you have a lot of people that when they think about religion and the practices, they think it's like very strict. You need to do it in a certain way, and it must be like that, right? For example, I've learned from my childhood that while praying, you need to stay in a certain way with your legs and your arms, and you know, there is this specific. Of course, there is a specific way of doing the prayers, but you know, some people are very extremist and they go to the most extreme. And here we can see, you know, God is excusing us. He knows what we are capable of, and He makes sure that you know that we can do our practices in an easier way, and it's all based on that situation, right? Like we have the same with the things for us to eat which are prohibited. Even in that verse, God says, like, if you are in a certain situation and you are forced to eat it, you don't have another choice. You can have things that are prohibited, right? But only and you shouldn't what is it called, exalt. I'm not sure if that the right word is, like you just need to eat to be like just enough for you to stay alive, for example, if you are in that kind of a circumstance. And again, like God doesn't say here, okay, you can stop doing your prayers. No, He says you can shorten it. There's a difference, right? Like with shortening. In 102, God explains the people while having this war how to do that actually, and it says, "War pray cautions. When you are with them and lead the contact prayer salat for them, let some of you stand guard. Let them hold their weapons and let them stand behind you as you prostrate. Then let the other group that has not prayed take their turn praying with you, while the others stand guard and hold their weapons. Those who disbelieved wish to see you neglect your weapons and your equipment in order to attack you once and for all. You commit no error if you are hampered by rain or injury by putting down your weapons, so long as you remain alert. God has prepared for the disbelievers a shameful retribution." So here, God gives in a very detailed way how to act in that specific circumstances, right? Like there is war and you need to be alert all the time, and you can shorten your prayer. And while you are doing the contact prayer salahs, God it tells us what to do exactly. Like there should be a group of people who are what is it called, they are cautious, and if the enemy arrives, they can act immediately. Because when you're praying and if someone's going to come and attack you and you have no one to protect you at that moment, or no one who's being cautious with their weapons in their hands, then of course you are late and you can be killed. Like that's not a smart way of going to war, right? You need to be smart, you need to be alert, and while doing that, of course, this shows us actually how important the contact prayers salat are, right? Like even in that very difficult, very dangerous moment, God tells the believers to do their contact prayers salat in a specific, a little bit different way. That one group is going to pray, the other group is going to protect them, and then the group that protected the group that prayed, and then they switch, right? And then it's their turn, and then you do the contact prayers salat, like at that war area or at that time. And God also says, you commit no error if you are hampered by rain or injury by putting down your weapons. So, if I understand this correctly, it says also while others stand guard and hold their weapons, where it was like when you are praying. It says here, for them, let some of you stand guard, let them hold their weapons, and let them stand behind you as you are prostrate. So, um, yeah, so this is a very detailed verse where God explains exactly how to do it, right? This is really amazing, mashallah. So, but what we generally, what I see here is that how important the contact prayer salat is. And if you would look at the other part, like, are they praying? I'm not sure. They could be, because you have idol worshippers, right? Like they say that they're Muslims, and they say that they will pray to God again. And if you would end up being in war with them, that's also possible, of course, but we can talk about it. 103, the contact prayers. Once you complete your contact prayers salat, you shall remember God while standing, sitting, or lying down. Once the war is over, you shall observe the contact prayers salat. The contact prayers salat are decreed for the believers at specific times. And the footnote says, your God is whoever or whatever occupies your mind most of the day. In order to belong in God's kingdom and enjoy His grace and protection, the Quran exhorts us to remember God always. Chapter 2, 152 and 200, chapter 3, 195 and 191, chapter 33, 41 to 42. This profound fact explains the numerous verses asserting that most of those who believe in God are going to hell. 12, 106, 23, 84 to 89, 29, 61 to 63, 31, 25, 39, 38, and 43, 87. These are the verses where we can read about this topic and see footnote 3191 and appendix 27. So, like, we know, of course, that the Messenger of the Covenant has a video where he explains about that God is running everything. And of course, um, the very important sentence is that whatever occupies your mind most of the day, that is your God. So this is very important. Even if you say that you believe in God and that you're a submitter or you're a Muslim or like that, it doesn't actually matter. Like if you say that you are a submitter, but your mind is occupied and it's about money, for example, then God is not your God. Then money is your God. Or if your mind is occupied with your children, with other things, it actually doesn't matter. Anything besides God, if that if your mind is occupied by that thing most of the day, then that's basically your God. So it's very important to make sure that most of the time in a day we need to remember God. And 5 times of praying is something that helps us in that way, right? Like you need to wake up before the sunrise, at dawn, and then remember God. And at noon, at afternoon, 5 times a day, thinking about praying and thinking about God is very important, and it really helps us. Imagine if God didn't tell us to pray 5 times a day. If that was not the case, like it would even make it more difficult for us to remember God, right? Because right now we know we need to pray 5 times a day, and we are always checking the time, when the prayer time is going to start. So every time that you think of the prayer salat, you're thinking of God. So sometimes you're ending up thinking all the time, like, okay, I shouldn't miss my prayer. So like manage and do your things and quickly go and do your contact prayer salat. And in 103, we read, once you complete your contact prayer, you shall remember God while standing, sitting, or lying down. Like even after the salat, right? You finish your contact prayer salat, so you did your thing, the commandment of God, and God tells us you shall remember God while standing, sitting, or lying down. Meaning, like most of the times when you're standing, sitting, like when even when you're working, when you're eating, and of course we have learned that we need to do we need to say in the name of God before we eat, right? Or when you are when you are saying that you're going to do something, we always need to say if God wants, right? That's also a moment when you remember God. Or when you look at the sky, you see how magnificent and how beautiful it is. That's also a moment to remember God. Like we should find excuses to remember God, basically, like really excuses to commemorate Him, inshallah. And God says, once the war is over, you shall observe the contact praise salat. Like exactly the way how we are supposed to do that. Like this is in 102, God teaches us how to do the contact praise salat in war times. And of course, we can shorten it. In 101, we learned that we can shorten that. But when war is over and there is no, danger, then we need to do it accordingly, like God has taught us in the Quran how to do our contact praise salat. 104. Do not waver in pursuing the enemy. If you suffer, they also suffer. However, you expect from God what they never expect. God is omniscient, most wise. Yes, so like it says, if you suffer, they also suffer, right? War is not easy for both parties. It's not easy, or more parties if there is. This is a verse where God like reminds us to be. We shouldn't be really afraid, right? We should put our trust into God. We should know that God is with the believers, with the righteous one, and He promises to help the believers. And there are also other verses in the Quran where God tells the believers not to be afraid, right? Like, of course, as human beings, a war, fighting, those are very dangerous and difficult things. But like when you're a true believer, you know that God is with you and God promises to help you out. So you have that expectation, of course, right? You can expect that because God promises to help. We have sent down to you the scripture truthfully in order to judge among the people in accordance with what God has shown you. You shall not side with the betrayers. You shall implore God for forgiveness. God is forgiver, most merciful. Of course, like as a believer, we shouldn't ask for forgiveness for idol worshippers or other people. We can only pray for to God to not for forgiveness, but for guiding them, of course, right? Because Abraham did it, for example. He asked forgiveness for his offsprings to be, people from his offspring to be righteous people and good people. But God answered that, and He says, like, not all of them are going to be righteous or good people. It all depends on that soul and what that soul deserves, of course. And one of the other important things is the sentence where it says, in order to judge among the people in accordance with what God has shown you. So this reminds me of the video where the messenger talks about the topic judging people. And he says that it's the devil's trick to make people think that only God can judge, right? Of course, God is the judge, but the God as a judge, He sent us a book where He has taught us certain things, right? For example, God says that certain acts are the acts of idol worshippers, right? Like if someone is doing idol worship, then we can say, okay, this person is an idol worshipper because he is doing idol worship at that time. So for us to say this is not wrong, actually. Or if someone is like being a hypocrite, like a hypocrite, um, then we look at that person, we look at his or her actions, and based on that, We have the Quran. The Quran teaches us exactly what the good things are and what the bad things are, right? Like it's a book that shows us the right path and shows us what's wrong. And if you see someone doing that wrong thing, we can say, listen, this is like these are the qualities of an hypocrite. So we can say that that person is an hypocrite, and we need to act in that certain way, right? Like for example, God says that we need to run away from them, but if you can't judge a person on his actions, and you can judge that person, and you can determine that that person is a hypocrite, how are you going to follow that commandment of God, right? So because we have the Quran, exactly like the messenger says, we can judge. And if I'm not mistaken, he also cites this verse: "We have sent down to you the scripture truthfully in order to judge among the people in accordance with what God has shown you. You shall not side with the betrayers. You shall implore God for forgiveness. God is forgiver, most merciful." 107. Do not defend the transgressors. Do not argue on behalf of those who have wronged their own souls. God does not love any betrayer guilty. So, like, this is also, even if that person is your family, right? Even if that person is your own son or your daughter or your spouse or your father or mother, like your parents, like, if someone is a wrong doer, um, then the thing what they are doing is of course wrong, and God says, do not argue on behalf of those who have wronged their own souls. So we shouldn't be advocating them, right? We shouldn't be advocates of those who are doing these bad things, and God does not love any betrayer guilty. They hide from the people and do not care to hide from God, though he is with them as they harbor ideas he dislikes. God is fully aware of everything they do. Like even them trying to hide from God, that's really funny actually. Like, how in the world do you think you can hide from God, who knows everything, who does everything, who knows your innermost thoughts, right? He knows everything. And he says he is with them as they harbor ideas he dislikes. God is fully aware of everything they do. And the commandment is clear, right? We can see this in the title: do not defend the transgressors. This is a commandment we should follow, even if those are our own families or anything else. 109. You do not help them by being nice. Yeah. Here you are arguing on their behalf in this world. Who is going to argue with God on their behalf on the day of resurrection? Who is going to be their advocate? Like, this is definitely an important topic, like, and the messenger of course speaks about this topic as well. And we have still today, like, the Muslims, they believe that, for example, Muhammad the prophet is going to argue with God on behalf of them, like trying to help them out from hell. Right, someone is destined for hell, for example, but then Muhammad is going to come, they believe, and then he's going to advocate for them. Yeah, but this person, he said so many times, um, what do you say? Muhammad Rasulullah, for example, like he praised Muhammad so many times, or he lived like I lived, and he went to the toilet like I went to the toilet, or like he followed my sunnah, for example. You have so many things going on, and people thinking that that's going to help them out, right? Like, um, they believe that by following what is said in hadith and doing or living like the prophet. Of course, the things that are mentioned in the hadith and sunnah, the messenger, the prophet Muhammad never saw those things, right? But the main thing, the main idea behind it is that they think that if they are going to live like in the hadith and in sunnah, the prophet is going to save them from God. He's going to save them from hell. And in this verse, we can clearly see that you cannot save someone who is destined to hell, even if you are a prophet, or it doesn't matter. The decision has already been made. And God says, like, you're arguing on behalf of those people in this world, but who is going to argue with God on their behalf on the day of resurrection? Is going to be their advocate. And we, of course, learn from the Quran that there is no one who can argue against God, you know. on the day of resurrection. That's not possible. Anyone who commits evil or wrongs his soul, then implores God for forgiveness, will find God forgiving, most merciful. Again, here it's very important to understand that, when you commit evil, or like you commit a sin, knowingly and willingly, of course you are going to pay for that, right? Um, like when you commit a sin not knowing and then repenting, God of course says that he is most merciful and most forgiving. So this is an important topic, and important, um, it needs to be distinguished, because a lot of people, they think that, yeah, like I'm going to do the sin and then I'm going to repent, knowingly doing a sin is like, that doesn't count. You are going to pay for every sin that you're doing, like knowingly. If you're doing it knowingly, you are going to pay for that, of course. But if you didn't know it was a sin, and you have learned afterwards, after doing the sin, and then you repent, of course, God says, God is most merciful. He's going to forgive that. You are not going to pay for that sin, let's say, because you didn't know that it was a sin. Anyone who earns a sin, then accuses a innocent person thereof, has committed a blasphemy and a gross offense. Anyone who earns the sin, I'm sorry, did I miss one? Anyone who earns a sin earns it to, yes, I didn't read 111, so I'll read that, inshallah. Anyone who earns a sin earns it to the detriment of his own soul. God is omniscient, most wise. Anyone who earns a sin, then accuses an innocent person thereof, has committed a blasphemy and a gross offense. Like, maybe we can talk about this verse after the study. What I understand from is, like, if you have sinned, then you have sinned. Like, this is for your own soul. Like, um, you cannot accuse someone else for this. And like, you are responsible for everything that you do. You are responsible for, if you're going to follow someone, and because of that, you made a mistake, like, or you sinned, let's say, right? Like, that is that is your own fault. You can't just say, okay, I sinned because of that person. Of course you can say it, but like, that doesn't count. You need to be, if of course, if you know that it's a sin, and you're still going to do it, and then you're going to say, yeah, but I knew it was a sin, but I followed that person, like, that's not gonna help you out. Of course, when you do a sin not knowing, and then you repent, in the previous verses that we have read, God is most merciful, most forgiving. But here, what I understand from this is that anyone who earns a sin, then accuses an innocent person thereof, has committed a blasphemy and a gross offense. Like, this is a blasphemy, so something very wrong. 113. If it were not for God's grace towards you and his mercy, some of them would have misled you. They only mislead themselves, and they can never harm you in the least. God has sent down to you the scripture and wisdom, and he has taught you what you never knew. Indeed, God's blessings upon you have been great. Um, yeah, so um, if your soul deserves to go to heaven, and God knows this, God is going to protect you from others who want to mislead you, right? Like, this is what I understand from this verse. Um, and yeah, so and God says some of them would have misled you if it was not for God's grace towards you, right? Because God knows that you deserve it, so that's why he's protecting you from that. And they say they only mislead themselves, and they can never harm you in the least. They can't do that because, God is protecting you. And God says, God has sent down to you the scripture and wisdom, and he has taught you what you never knew. The Prophet Muhammad, of course, he was he was a person who didn't know all of these things, right? He didn't even know the Injil or the Gospels. He didn't have any information about them. And then God revealed, of course, the scripture and taught him the wisdom and all these things he never knew, and he couldn't have known these things, right? Like there are these verses in the Quran where God speaks about, for example, the mountains, the stars. He speaks about the embryo. He speaks about so many things in very detail, even a lot of things that the humans of today just learned, right? We just had this information come to us after this technological revelation, right? With, for example, the satellites or the microscopes, or the things that we have today, so we can make calculations on how this world works. For example, the shape of the world. Like there are so many detailed things in the Quran, specifically things that it's very impossible for someone who lived 1400 years ago, who like for that person it's impossible to know all these things. 114. There is nothing good about their private conferences except for those who advocate charity or righteous works or making peace among the people. Anyone who does this in response to God's teachings, we will grant him a great recompense. Like this tells me that there's nothing good about their private conferences. Like if there is, like, why should we um keep things privately, right? Except for those who advocate charity or righteous works or making peace among the people. So what I understand from this is like uh when you have a private conference, like it's private, right? You're not telling, but then the topic is about advocating charity or doing righteous works or making peace among people. Like there could be so many things. um it needs to be private, right? Some people can be offended about it, I think, because some people, they if you are in need and you need money, but you want to hide it, right? You are shy about it. That's also possible. And then, some other people can come together, and then they could talk with each other about how to help that person, right? And then try to keep it secret. That's one of the things that I'm thinking of. It says, do righteous works or making peace among people. So it's possible that you have, a group of people that are enemies, or like, how to say, like there's a problem in between them, and then you want to make peace between them, and you want to keep this a secret, for like you want to do it privately, because maybe if you're not going to do it privately, maybe it can the situation can become worse, right? And if there are any other examples the brothers and sisters want to give after the study, inshallah, I'll be my guest. But these are the things that what I'm thinking of. And God says, anyone who does this in response to God's teachings, we will grant them a great recompense. So it's a good thing to, because these are all righteous deeds, right? You want to help someone out with a charity, you want to make peace. If there are any problems or issues. And if you do this privately, like God says that He will grant him a great recompense. 114. As for him who opposes the messenger after the guidance has been pointed out to him and follows other than the believer's way, we will direct him in the direction he has chosen and commit him to hell. What a miserable destiny. So when I was reading this verse, I thought again about, for example, Edith. He says, as for him who opposes the messenger, after the guidance has been pointed out to him and follows other than the believer's way, we will direct him in the direction he has chosen. So it's important that when there is a messenger, and he comes with new teachings, or like the he teaches us things, right, that God wants us to to know. And there may be things that we have other opinions on that topic. That's possible, but it's important that there is a reason why God is sending that information. It comes through a messenger, and that message is basically coming from God. So as a submitter, we need to like submit to that, right? And then um, because that's the guidance. We shouldn't have our opinions shouldn't differ from the opinions of a messenger. It needs to be in the same line, even if we think that we are right. Like it's possible that someone can think that his own opinion is the right opinion, but if the messenger says otherwise, then of course you need to follow what the messenger says, because there's a clear verse in the Quran where God tells us to do that. And we learn from this verse that as for him who opposes the message after the guidance has been pointed out, like this can also be someone at that point who didn't accept it, right? A person who has the guidance has reached him, all right? Like this information, the truth about religion reached him. That when the messenger came, for example, he taught the people that the thing that they were doing was wrong. Like following hadith or sunnah, that those things are wrong, and he came with like evidences from the Quran. And when this evidence comes, when the truth comes to you, then if you are a truthful person, a righteous person, you should accept this, right? And if you don't do that, God says, He says that we will direct him in the direction he has chosen and commit him to hell. And here we see that people, when like anyone who is going to hell, uh, they chose to go to hell. It's their own decision. They wanted to go to hell, right? It's not something that um, they went to hell uh, uh, b- because no reason. There is a reason for that, and the reason is basically any soul who went to there wanted him or herself. 116, the unforgivable sin. God does not forgive idol worship if maintained until death, and he forgives lesser offenses for whomever he wills. Anyone who idolizes any idol beside God has strayed far astray. The footnote says a simple definition of idolatry is believing that anything beside God can help you. Yes, like one of the problems is that people don't know what idol worship is. They think that idol worship is something that you have a statue and then you bow down in front of this statue. That is idol worship. But in reality, and what we learn from the Quran is that, for example, believing that anything beside God can help you is idol worship. And we see in many religions actually that all of them are asking help other than God. The Muslims of today, they are praying 5 times a day and reading Fatiha chapter key, where it says only you we worship and only you we ask help. But meanwhile they're asking help from the prophet, from the saints, from like anyone else beside God. And this is idol worship. And if you maintain this thing that you are doing until death, then you are going to die as an idol worshiper. And God says that He does not forgive idol worship. This is the only thing that God does not forgive. He says they even worship female gods besides Him. As a matter of fact, they only worship a rebellious devil. God has condemned him, and He said, "I will surely recruit a definite share of your worshippers." And in the footnote says the majority of believers in God fall into idolatry. 12, chapter 12, verse 106. The time when the devil said to God that he's going to mislead most of the people, right? um, y- like it's true that the majority of the believers in God fall into idolatry. Like they say that they believe in God, they say that they believe in the hereafter, but as we can clearly see in the example of the Muslims of today, for example, like when you ask them how many gods are there, like almost all of them are going to say that there's only one God, and they worship only one God, and they follow only one God. But in reality, when you look at their actions, they basically don't believe in God. Even if they say that they believe in God, they don't believe in Him. and they don't follow what God says. Like in these very simple, basic things, they are not doing it. For example, God says to pray in a certain way, they don't do it. God teaches us what the Shahada is, they don't do it in that way. Or the Zakat, for example, the obligatory charity Zakat is not done accordingly. The ablution is not done accordingly. Like so many things, almost none is done accordingly. And the messenger also talks about this. He says the Muslims of today aren't doing anything according to the Quran. Nothing is according to the Quran. Not the prayers, not the zakat, not the hajj. Like the prohibitions are not according to the Quran. Nothing is according to the Quran. Yeah, so God willing, I will end here. It's already 45 minutes. So if there are any questions or things that you brothers and sisters want to add, please go ahead.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother.
MashaAllah, thank you, brother.
Yeah, so there are some verses where, maybe we can talk about those things. Um,
MashaAllah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Um, yeah, so if we could summarize the verses that we have read. 1 second. So the titles were like on 95 was higher ranks for the strivers, and it's basically the system of God, right? He created this system that he sends us to this world, and then he's testing us to show our real qualities. And the ones who strive more in the cause of God, they have these higher ranks, of course. And even if you would have other people who would end up in heaven, if they did less of a striving, of course their ranks will be lower than those, because God just, of course, he knows exactly who deserves what. We have read about apathy condemned, like we need to be when there is a possibility, if you live in a country or a place where you cannot practice your religion, and if you have the opportunity to leave that place, then you should do that. That's an important thing. And you like and I think the reason is, of course, it needs to be in the cause of God, because most people, you just don't want to leave your country, right? Like, or you leave your home behind. But if you're not able to practice your religion, then you need to end up giving that, right? You need to, what was it said? And he gives up your home and emigrates to God and his messenger. Um, so that shows that that's more important for you, right? That's more important than a land or house or anything else. And we spoke about, we read about the wars, and even while there is a war, we need to do the contact prayer salat, and of course in a specific way that God has taught us in the Quran. But we need to stay alert. That's important. And of course, after the contact prayer salat, we need to commemorate God all the time, while standing, lying down, or sitting. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. We need to find excuses to think of God. We shouldn't be afraid in war times, right? We should know that God protects us, and God promises victory for the believers. And even if you die while striving in the cause of God, God promises heaven. That's also, showing us that believers shouldn't be afraid. Shouldn't be afraid of death, of course. Do not defend the transgressors. Yet this is also something, right? Like, and what I was thinking of while I was reading this, like, why should someone wanting to defend a transgressor? I think mostly because it could be family, it could be your own children, your spouses, your parents. And here it gives, yeah, like you do not help them by being nice. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit. What do you think, Brother Suleiman? It says you do not help them by being nice. Here you are arguing on their behalf in this world. Who is going to argue with God on their behalf on the day of resurrection? Like, can we say that, for example, you are trying to help the opposition?
Well, sometimes, people look at hypocrites, and they don't want to be harsh with them, because they they think that if you're harsh to the hypocrites, for example, that they may not react positively to the message, and they decide to instead be kind to them, and we're being told, like, you do not help them by being nice. Like, if you're trying to, like, for example, if you have maybe that's not the best example, but I think it can help us understand this. So let's say you have a child, who is spoiled, and likes to throw a tantrum every time they don't get something, and you, instead of like being firm at the time when the child is doing that, you end up giving in to the child, being nice to him, and the
Mm,
child understands this as a way, for example, for him to get whatever he wants. He does it, and you can look at that person at that time and say, well, you're not helping them at this time by being nice. You're actually encouraging that behavior, right?
mhm,
So with the hypocrites, for example, people try to guide the hypocrite, you know by being nice to them or by defending them, etc. In those
mhm,
situations, that doesn't help them. That actually encourages them to be more like that, because they feel that, because it's something that's hurting them. You're actually hurting them more by pushing them in that direction that they want to go to, rather than being firm and telling them, hey, this is wrong what you're doing. Instead,
yeah, also
you're just
homosexuals, for example, right?
homosexuals.
Yeah, like,
Um,
yeah, like you
yeah.
should tell them this is wrong what you're doing, and not
Mm-hmm.
being very nice. Okay, it's okay to be like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And one of the reasons is also people want to have a bigger group, right? Like this is also
Mm-hmm.
something what I have seen. They want to be this huge group, so they're accepting everything, like homosexuals or hypocrites or like even idol worshippers. They try to be nice to them, and
Mm-hmm.
but this is something that we need to be very, like you said, firm. Yeah, and then we have read 111 says, anyone who earns a sin earns it to the detriment of his own soul. God is omniscient, knows wise. Like this means basically like if you earn the sin, you wronged your own soul, like you did it for your own soul. And anyone who earns the sin then accuses an innocent person thereof. Can we say of understand this first, like I explained while I was doing the study, that you are sinning and then you are accusing someone else. Like, okay, it's because of him I did this sin. But it says an innocent person thereof. Like, what does God
Mm-hmm.
mean by an innocent person?
Yeah, I think a good example was that of Joseph. When the governor's wife, she tried to seduce him, and then when she was caught, she blamed Joseph,
Ah, okay.
right, of sexual misconduct.
Mm-hmm. He was innocent, she wasn't, and then she blamed
Mm-hmm.
eventually him, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mashallah, a good example. Or like if somebody cheats or something and then they blame the other side of cheating when they were innocent of cheating, but
Yeah.
the blamer is actually the one who cheated.
Mm-hmm.
That's very bad.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, Brother Jeffrey, you're talking about shorten of the prayers. Like I was kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, like that. Look, until now, what I like before, I always thought, shortening meant like only one rakat. That's what I always thought. But then, like from 4 to 3 is also shortening, right? Like, can we understand it that way, or is there something else that we can understand that verse specifically,
Yeah, but
or
Suleiman,
does it mean that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
about the
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
shortening, where it talks about the prayers, that you could shorten the prayers during war. Like, is it talking about like the rakas, or is it talking about a whole prayer? You know, like you don't have to do a noon or
No, it's talking
specifically
about shortening the prayer. Yeah.
rakas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then shortening means like if it's 4, you can do 3 or 2 or 1, right? It doesn't mean shortening doesn't mean you need to do 1, or like shortening means only doing 1. It's not like that. You understand the question, brother?
When you travel during war, you commit no error by shortening your contact prayer. If you fear the disbelievers may attack you, um, yeah. So it talks about how what that looks like, right?
What do you mean?
It talks about how that looks like when in verse 102 and in that surah 4. It talks about it in verse 102 what that looks like when you are with them. You lead the contact prayer. Let some of them stand guard. Let them hold their weapons. Let them stand behind you. Then let the other group who has not prayed take their turn with you when the others while the others stand guard and hold their weapons. Um, so I believe, like, one person leads the contact prayer, and the other people that are following, they take turns. Like, half of the group does the first 2 units or something, and then the other half is guarding at the time, and then uh, the other then they finish, and they're guarding, and the other half leads the other half is doing the other 2 units as a group.
Okay, so you end up doing, like, for example, 2 as a person, but as a group you still do it 4.
Yeah.
Okay, but how do you understand that
Yeah,
from the verse? Like
I don't
how?
remember, but this is what I remember.
Oh, okay.
But God willing, we'll never get in that situation, hopefully. So um
Oh, we're never gonna get in that situation, you say?
God willing.
Oh, inshallah not, of course, but
Well, even if we will, you will be Netherlands, so.
who knows?
You have to migrate, brother, to come help.
I need to migrate. Maybe you guys need to migrate. You guys need to migrate to here. Yeah, mashallah. It's so like what I always thought was like shortening is like it had to do with the rakats, and
Hmm.
in war precautions, like even like when yeah, like these two verses are next to each other, like 101 and 102. God talks about shortening, and then about how to do the prayers while in war. But here it said, when you travel during war, you commit no error by shortening.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
Also,
it says, when
when
you
you
are
look at
with
the
them and lead the. Sorry?
also when you look at the verse, that is the understanding that I think, based on how I have
Mm,
looked at this verse. It says, when you are with them and lead the contact prayers for them. So you're the one leading the contact prayers while um, let some of them stand guard and hold their weapons and stand behind you as you prostrate. Then let the others who has not prayed take their turn with you while the others
mm,
stand guard and hold their weapons. Right? So
mhm.
yeah.
Oh, I think
That
okay.
makes
So
sense. Yeah,
yeah, so you have the
you
imam
said
who
it
is
for them.
starting the prayer, and then you have a group. They did the two rakats, and when they
Mm-hmm.
finish the two rakats, they can stand up, and then the other ones are going to take their weapons, and then they are going to
Yeah,
start the prayers with you. So eventually,
yeah,
you end up doing, oh,
the
okay,
third.
like four
Yeah.
rakats, but then
Mm-hmm.
two each, so you can put. Oh, that makes really sense,
Mm-hmm.
mashallah. That makes really really sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, amazing, mashallah. And when it says you commit no error if you are hampered by rain or injury by putting down your weapons. So, so as long as you remain alert. So this means if there is rain or you're injured and you need to put down your weapon,
Mm-hmm.
and,
You can, but at
and
least you should still stand guard.
yeah, and then at that moment, like you are protecting the ones who are doing the prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And then God says, if it's a situation where you need to let down your weapon, then
Yeah,
it's
that also
also okay,
shows
but
that.
stay alert.
Yeah, that also shows to us, like people should not just leave their, like they're doing this because the other people cannot protect during this time, themselves. So you're there protecting them, and like it also shows to us like you can't just leave in the middle of your prayer, for example. Otherwise God will say like you can all just pray, and when you see the enemy coming, just leave your prayer and start fighting. But you're not doing that. God is showing us a system that in that situation, this is how it's supposed to be. Like, you take turns and guard each other, so that you can protect each other.
And when
Yeah.
the enemy attacks while you are doing the prayer, does this mean that the one group who's praying, they still need to do their prayers, and the one who's protecting them, they need to fight?
Well, I mean, they have to look out for them, right? So, um,
Okay.
yeah. So I mean, they're looking out for them. I mean, it doesn't really get into the details, but at least, um, they will know ahead of time if they see the enemy coming. Obviously, if you're doing your prayer, you're focused on your prayer. You're not going to look behind you. If the enemy's coming from behind, attacking you, you're not going to be able to do that during in the middle of your prayer, right? But if
Hmm.
there are other people standing guard behind you, they can look all around and be cautious in everything and warn the rest of the people.
Hmm.
MashaAllah. I like 116, and like you had talked about, it's really important and a good reminder. The footnote says a simple definition of idolatry: believing that anything beside God can help you. So and two, I think, like the messenger had pointed out, knowing that God is running everything ties into this. Because then, when somebody at our work may think that they did something for us, but we know God is doing everything. And, it's so important we have to get this right. Because this is idolatry. And like you had mentioned, Brother Jaffer, a lot of people, like when I talk to them about idols, Uh, like even in the past, some people I used to work with that were Christians, they think it's, well, most of them immediately point the fingers at Catholics and say, "Oh, they worship Mary," but they don't really know, um, like how the first commandment, that idols can be themselves or people, or they could be their boss, or their wife or something. Like my old boss, I had, a number of years ago, actually liked that idea, and he never heard it from anything or any pastor. And he even agreed, about his wife being his idol, and his business. It was a carpentry business. So this, I think it kind of points to like people inherently know, like maybe the soul knows this, but it's so important for us too, now that we do know, to so if we get help from somebody, of course this person helped us, let's say at work, but really it's God helping us. And knowing that God is doing everything, we're never, if we can get to that point and keep working on it, we're never going to look at things the same, so it'll, in a way, almost protect us, from falling into this trap. Because because everything, whether good or bad or seemingly bad, it's just it could be a blessing in disguise or something. We know it's God is running everything, so it's He's doing everything. So anything that's happening in our life, we're just going to be thinking about God. We're not going to be idolizing, let's say a person or something, or at a job, because we're not even really going to be thinking about them in a sense. We're just going to be thinking about God, and this also helps making God our God, trying to make it more than 50% of the day. But maybe we could shoot for 100 or 99.9% just to be safe and try our best.
Mashallah, brother.
MashaAllah. It says also the majority of believers in God fall into idolatry, and idolatry is something that God does not forgive. But I want to ask, like, you have also these people who, they live um, a normal life. Uh, they have taught a religion from their parents. They are eventually idol worshippers, like Sunnis, for example. Um, and they didn't heard about the message, for example, right? Can we say that if they were uh, heaven deserving souls, then God would have made sure that they would have um, learned about the message and then left their idolatry? Or can we say since they didn't heard about it, didn't hear about it, God is going to judge, and it's also a possibility that they will go to heaven. Can we say this, or can we?
No, we can't say that God will judge them and they will go to heaven, because God has already judged them based on the Quran. Because God says, idolatry is an unforgivable offense if maintained until death, because we all have God given instinct. We have the instinctive knowledge about worshiping God alone. So nobody can say that, oh, I didn't know.
But
I,
they think that they're worshiping God alone. They think that.
n- n- I mean, well, doesn't matter if they think that, but the thing is, if they are doing it, you know, it's not going to be accepted, because they have already been given the instinctive knowledge. So if they end up worshiping idols, they cannot say that it's fine, like, oh, I didn't know. That's not going to be an excuse that would be accepted from anyone, whether they know about the Quran or not, for example, because we came with instinctive knowledge, and we said we promised God that we were going to worship Him alone, right?
Mhm.
So anybody who ends up worshiping idols, God says that that will not be accepted. No excuse will be accepted from those people because of that. right? They should know better because they promised God. Yes, we can't recall the specifics, but we have the instinct inside of us that is still there, you know. So if they end up falling into idolatry, they can only blame themselves.
Mashallah,
Mm.
brother. And like every human being has that, you know. We
Hmm.
all have it. Mashallah.
MashaAllah.
And why is it that there are some souls who were idol worshippers before and then become submitters later? And like, can we say, okay, okay, so eventually what I understand now is that you make a promise to God that when God sends you to this world, you are going to be tested, and you promise Him not to be an idol worshiper. And coming to this world with that, um, it's like a contract, right? Or like an agreement, right? Because you promise you're going to uh, follow only God and worship only God and not being an idol worshiper.
Hmm. Yeah, I think also you, if you, brother, if you read Surah 7, verse 172 and onwards, about the instinctive knowledge that I was referring to.
Again, brother, can you repeat it? Which one?
Surah 7, if you can read Surah 7, verse 172, 173, 174.
72. Uh, can we go there? Thus, every human being is born with an instinctive knowledge of God. This one,
No,
right?
just the actual verses. Just read the actual.
Yeah, I'm opening. 1 second. Oh, I can't find it like that. I need to be a dot, maybe.
Just search for instinctive.
Instinctive knowledge.
I mean, that footnote you were on was the.
Here, here. We are born with instinctive knowledge about God.
Mhm.
Recall that your Lord summoned all of the descendants of Adam and had them bear witness for themselves. Am I not your Lord? They all said, yes, we were witness. Thus you cannot say on the day of resurrection, we were not aware of this. Nor can you say it was our parents who practiced idolatry and we simply followed in their footsteps. Will you punish us because of what others have innovated? Oh, ma, that makes really sense, brother. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, this is a very good answer for that question, I think.
Sure.
So you can't say, "Oh, I didn't know." You can't
Yeah,
say this. "Oh,
exactly.
my parents were Sunni, so that's why I'm
Mhm.
a Sunni." So
Mhm.
you can't say this. You
No,
need to
no,
examine yourself.
yeah, yeah. I mean, people who are bad souls, and they deserve to go to hell. They're born in these families where they train them from a very young age how to be an idol worshiper, and they encourage in that direction. God could have put them in a good believing family, and then they wouldn't have this excuse. But God already knows about their souls, where they deserve to go. You know.
And also they don't how do you say this? Question. They don't question
Hmm.
their parents' religion, right? They say,
Hmm.
"Okay, because I'm
Yeah,
born in a Sunni family, then this
yeah,
is the right religion." Or if you're a
yeah. And the
Hindu,
thing is, that doesn't even matter. For example, Abraham's father was an idol worshiper. Muhammad's family were idol worshippers. But they weren't idol worshippers simply because their families were. They questioned it, and they went against it. Right? They followed their natural instinct, and they went against what their parents believed. I mean, Abraham didn't need someone to tell him, that you're supposed to worship God alone.
Mhm.
He was a naturally monotheist submitter who chose to, follow his instinctive, knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, and like if we could give an example of our day, our time, like there was a messenger that came with a new message. So, like if someone wants to be saved, that person should should question his or her parents' religion and then go into a search for the truth. And if that person is sincere and wants to know the truth, then God is going to guide that person towards the truth, and eventually end up coming into submission, right? And if that's not the case, then can we say that that person, first of all, didn't deserve because that person really didn't care, maybe?
I mean, the thing is that what that person you're talking about is still in this world, right? But let's say, I mean, the person dies, and you know that they died as a disbeliever, then you can say everything, But the thing is, if the person's still alive, I mean, I don't know.
But doesn't change
Uh,
until death. Let's say,
right? Yeah, yeah. Of course.
mhm.
Anybody who deserved guidance, God will guide them before they die.
Yeah, but then we're specifically talking about the Torah, the message, submission, following only the Quran.
Mm,
And if that person didn't became a submitter, we can't
mm,
say, oh yeah, that person didn't know. We can't say that actually, because if that person would have deserved it, then God would have guided that person towards submission.
mm.
You see?
You can't. I mean, based on some saying someone didn't know, doesn't mean that this person's going to heaven, right? If they're worshiping idols, then and they maintain until death, they're going to go to hell because idol worship is an unforgivable offense if maintained until death.
That's basic and
Yeah,
clear information.
yeah.
Yes.
But let's say someone didn't know the messenger of the covenant, but they weren't idol worshippers, they can still go to heaven, right?
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but let's say someone wasn't an idol worshiper and the messenger came and they rejected the messenger, then that's a ground for us putting someone in hell, making a distinction among God's messengers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, brother, like why, like it was just exposed to disbelief because why wouldn't they believe if he's just proclaiming the truth? You know, God alone.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if somebody is not um s-
Yeah.
like
But I'm
accepting
saying,
that they
yeah,
don't
but
believe in God alone.
I'm just giving an example about, someone saying that I knew versus I didn't know. I mean, you
Mm,
can say I didn't believe in the message of the covenant because I didn't know about him. I never heard about him. That's different.
right,
As
right.
long as you're not an idol worshiper, you do the minimum requirements, you could still go to heaven based on
Mashallah.
that, right?
Yeah, but if
Mhm.
you're a Sunnite, then there is no way that you're not an idol worshiper, because the whole Sunni religion is
Hmm.
based on idol worship, like
Yeah,
totally in every
yeah,
way.
yeah. But let's say someone's parents were Sunni, right? And they only believed in God alone, and they
Oh,
never worshipped any idols. They didn't even do the corrupt prayer. They just
oh,
survived on those snacks. They could possibly, theoretically, you know, they never heard about submission, and they in their hearts they worship God alone, and they're righteous people. You know, they have a chance.
but
You
if
know.
you are
Yeah,
righteous and you
Mash.
are this person and you have the Quran and like, okay, and then you never have heard of Dr. Rashad or the message.
Yeah, this is just hypothetical. I mean,
Yeah, but how can you be a God alone worshiper if you still pray? Oh, but then you said you don't pray. Okay,
no,
then
I
you
said
also
you.
don't give the zakat. And how is it possible?
Brother,
Have you
Well, I
it's
mean,
seen
they're
no,
it?
not. They're
it's
just
it's in
snacking.
the
They might.
right. It's in the Quran
They're
too.
not doing the. They're not doing the. All the practices. That could theoretically. I mean, hypothetically speaking, I'm
Okay,
saying.
but brother, okay, but
Yeah.
okay, okay, but the system that God has created, yeah, is that you need to grow your soul. Okay, so and how do you grow your soul? By following the commandments.
Yeah,
But if
so
you
that's
don't
why I'm giving you
follow
the
the
example of the
commandments,
snacking and the meals, right? The messenger of the covenant gives the
Yeah.
example of snacking and the meals, right? You take the meals, the big meals, you're definitely gonna make it. You know, with the snacks, you can barely, maybe you can make it. You know, as long as you're not committing idol worship. You know, maybe. You know, there's a big maybe. But
Yeah.
but I'm saying
mm,
I'm just thought. I guess my point is just about illustrating an example about the minimum requirements. You know, to make it to heaven, right? Idol worship is not something that you can skip by saying you didn't know, but everything else you could say, right? Like not knowing about the messenger of the covenant. Yeah, it's not in the minimum requirements. If they didn't know, they can say I didn't know, and that's totally fine. But you can't say I didn't know that I was supposed to worship God alone.
okay,
You know?
I didn't know, but that person is an atheist.
Yeah,
He can still end up at but then he doesn't believe in God, so he doesn't fill the minimum requirements, so he eventually not going to end up in heaven.
yeah.
So
Minimum
this person is
requirements
either
is
so
worshiping
this
God
person
alone is part of the minimum requirements.
yeah so this person is either a Sunni Muslim, Shia Muslim, a Christian, a like any person who believes that God exists, right, and believes in the hereafter.
As long as they're
Also,
not an idol worshiper, they believe in God, they believe in the hereafter, and they lead a righteous life. Which in this case could be like just snagging, like giving to charity, being honest, kind, etc. Um,
Mm.
also, brothers, I'm not
yeah,
sure if it's in the introduction or a footnote, but I mean, the messenger of the covenant talks about this. How they could be submitters that are Muslims, submitters that are Christians, submitters that are from different
Hinduism, yeah.
religions. Yeah,
mhm, yeah.
Yeah, and what does he say about that exactly?
he said that they could be submitters no matter like the
Label.
um yeah, right, the
Mm.
because like deep inside, like back to their distinctive nature, deep inside they're submitters, but I mean it's um
I mean, not just deep
What
in.
would be the reason for them not to get the information about submission? What would be, especially in this day, like with internet and everything that you have? Like it's very easy, right, to come across the video of Dr. Rashad where he explains that what the Sunnis and the current Muslims are doing is very
Mhm,
wrong and it's idol worship.
mhm.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that God knows everybody's circumstance, right? So
mashallah.
people will be judged according to what they know. However, idol worship is not one of those things that you can say because we all have the instinctive knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mashallah, brother.
so like a Sunni person who is a very good person, let's say, who is charitable, he doesn't lie, doesn't cheat, just like helps the poor and needy, and is an honest person, doesn't lie, for example, but does the contact prayer salat like a Sunni does.
Yeah,
And
that's
when you
idol
do,
worship, right? Because they're
yeah,
mentioning
it's idol worship.
other entities besides God.
Yeah, even not knowing, like even unknowingly, still does the
Mm-hmm.
contact prayer salat,
No,
right?
there's no, I mean, it's not about unknowing in that sense because they are disobeying God at that time by
Yeah, but he thinks he's following the commandment of
no,
God
it
by
doesn't
doing
matter
that
what
prayer.
he thinks. What they're doing is idol worship. So they can say like someone who's worshiping Jesus, they think they're worshiping God, right? Is that
Mhm.
counted?
Yeah,
No,
same
No,
thing.
it's still
no,
idol worship.
it's
Mm-hmm.
idol worship. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like for example, my father, who is a Sunni, who does pray 5 times a day, who doesn't lie and cheat, and is a very nice person, and like does all these things, right? And let's say I didn't told him about the message. I did with my father, but let's say I didn't tell him this, and but he's like a good person. I can say that eventually he's not going to end up in heaven because he's doing idol worship with his prayers, with all the commandments he's doing wrongly, not
Yeah.
according to the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
right? I can see this.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
I
let's
can judge him on that.
yeah. Hmm.
Oh, okay. So I can judge him with this information.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, then you need to be a very specific person, right? That like you don't do those idol worship practices, and you're in a very specific situation where you didn't hear about the message either.
Yeah, I mean the basic requirements, they minimum requirements, they cover every case,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, brother, mashallah.
yeah. So
MashaAllah.
Okay, and I had one other thing. Wait one second.
yeah, so
It was, well, brother, one other thing. 1 second. Oh, but we went to another one. It was about the place for immigration, and then in the verse it says afterwards that their place will be hell. And does that mean that this is their excuse? You know, they're not doing the practices, and they say, "Yeah, we couldn't do that because, like, the people who didn't migrate, right?"
hmm.
So that is how we should understand that, because they knew the truth. They didn't migrate because of any other reason, while they could, and they didn't do the practices, so they ended up in hell. Wait 1 second. Yes, for it is in 97. What was it? 97. Because it was God's earth not spacious enough for you to emigrate therein, and for these the final abode is hell and a miserable destiny.
Yeah, and I think it's also saying, like, I mean, if you are in such a position that you should immigrate. If you're stuck in a place where you're not able to practice your religion freely, you know, if you have the means to immigrate in that situation, you should immigrate, right? Don't put yourself in a situation where you're oppressed and you're not able to practice God's religion freely. Yes, you
Mhm.
can still practice it, but you're not doing it freely. The instructions are for us to immigrate to a place where we can openly practice our religion.
Yeah, so that can be an excuse not to
Uh,
practice religion.
yeah, so this includes like if like even um like praying in public or uh sharing something online, like if the government, let's say of whatever country, could come arrest you or like burn you or like like these crazy things that have happened to people. Yeah, you could
Well,
technically practice it, but like if you can't do something like that, like what
you,
we've seen
you yeah,
happen in, I
like
think,
like
Pakistan.
here, yeah. So like here, you can practice your religion freely, but
Right?
in other countries, you just for practicing your religion,
You could
like
get arrested.
just go like certain countries like Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, like all these countries where there are people living in those countries and identify as submitters too. You know, the thing is, if you openly say you're a submitter, you could be sentenced to death, or killed and lynched like before getting killed, or imprisoned for life.
Right.
You know
Yeah,
that
and you
like
think like
you
you
literally
can't
you
even
can't
spread the
you don't have to
message.
do anything political.
Right.
You just say I'm a submitter. There's no God besides God. And I don't associate any others with God. They can consider that as an insult
Yeah.
to Muhammad because you decide not to worship Muhammad, etc. But here you don't have that
Right.
issue,
Right.
But for
Yes.
those countries where people have that issue and they're
Mm-hmm.
not able to practice their religion freely, God says you need to strive and immigrate. Apathy
Right.
is condemned. Like, don't do that uh, y- because these people that are in hell in these verses that are described as being in hell, like they had the opportunity to
Right.
strive and immigrate. Yeah, life would be a little bit difficult. They might have to start over, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but they should immigrate, you know. So
Yeah,
that
too.
is.
Plus, they'll be more like happy in the end, like not have to look
Mhm,
over their shoulders if they're
mhm,
just talking to somebody at a cafe about submission and having to like check their
mhm,
like, oh, did I speak too loud? Did these people say no? We don't worship Muhammad as submitters. Like,
mhm,
they could relax, like come into a country where you could
mhm.
speak these things openly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like you said, it's a little hard at first for these people, but in the end, it's much better to be able to roam the earth freely and yeah, practice and
Mhm,
not having to worry about like being
mhm.
tortured or
Yeah.
arrested or killed or something. I mean,
Yeah. I
that's
mean, I would say, based on your earlier comment, like I would say that it's kind of in jeopardy, like the freedom for people, but we still have it here,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But obviously, people are trying to, make it a place where we don't have that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, even these radical Christians like calling
Mm-hmm.
for execution of certain people, like you can't do
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Like, should we now? So if something were like that happening, we should step in and like even let's say a group was targeted, like homosexuals, like if we're seeing something like that happen, if they were actively trying to kill these people, because we did see some radical preacher talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
we should step in and like do our best to help this not to happen, and not just let them die.
I mean, I think that
I guess this
you
is
could always
If you have
raise
the
more
power, I
send to
think.
the
If you
right
have the power.
message. I mean, of course, yeah, but like, as God says, if you're established rulers or something,
right.
you could do
Yeah.
the right thing and you know re- uh set the right standards,
Hmm.
for
Because the penalty is not
what is
it's
up.
not death.
Yeah, yeah, like, yeah, exactly. So I mean, even mashallah in the US, like, death is not something that's taken lightly, right? I mean, there are people who
Right.
even murder people and they still don't end up getting capital punishment always, right?
Hmm.
So um yeah, so I mean, but the thing is, I mean, if we see people advocating these things, I mean, we should advocate righteousness, right? We should
Right. Right.
advocate
Yeah.
God's laws
Exactly.
and
Like freedom,
keeping, yeah,
justice,
yeah. So I mean, you
and
can,
people will be attracted to that. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, if it comes to a point where these rules were actually turning into laws, you know, then we would have a real problem, right? But
Right.
people who are just talking about this and advocating these things, obviously
Right. Right. Yeah. They're
that is
just
wrong, and
speaking.
we
Yeah.
should advocate against it, right?
Right. Yeah. They're just speaking their nonsense.
Hmm. Yeah,
But I mean, mashallah,
we
a
know
lot
from
of
the
Christians.
messenger of the covenant, for example, when it comes to homosexuals, for example, you're supposed to do the difficult thing, which is to try to talk them out of it.
Hmm. Yeah. Even if it may
you know,
offend them, like you gotta.
yeah.
I think I ran into a situation like that back in I think 2022, and it was very awkward, uh, but I felt good afterwards because like even uh, at least I did my part, and then there's this person you work with, and you're just neutral towards him. You're not mean towards him, but you're also not like trying to be his friend and stuff unless he shows maybe enthusiasm to change and follow God's system, for their own happiness.
Yeah, it's the best thing that happened to that person. You telling him that it's wrong what he's doing and he needs to change and he needs to save his soul, right? Like that's actually, if you look from that perspective, that's the best day of his life. That someone came to him and told the truth about it to help him out and try to save his soul, right? That he could, if he would have listened to you, of course.
Yeah, and it's a much better
So
approach. And I mean, like mashallah, it's like everything too. We have from the Quran and from the Messenger is like the truth because just the way he was kind of taken back, but like the response, like most people, like even well, I'm not going to speak on all Christians on behalf, but so many other people go about it the wrong way and like want to condemn these people to hell or something, and then it's like no, like you don't know what if their situation, like you have to. I mean, uh, like the messenger said, you talk them out of it. You don't just go up to him and tell him, no, you shouldn't exist in our town. You're this and that. No. I mean, obviously, you're not supporting these people. You're not like advocating what they're advocating, but you do want to give them the message in the best possible manner. Um, yeah.
lately, I I'm talking a little bit also about Apophis, the asteroid, and the smoke prophecy and that kind of stuff. And one of the most reactions that I get from people is, "What are you gonna do if it's not going to happen?" Like you say that's gonna happen, but what if it's not? But when you talk about this topic and you give them this date and the things that are going to happen, you know, in almost all of the people that I've spoken about this topic, they were like, first of all, they were very afraid, like even if they don't believe in it, like there's still this thing, what I see in most of them, um, that maybe because they think that, oh, what if it happens? So they come up with the question, yeah, but what are you gonna do if it's not gonna happen?
But that's yeah. Maybe it kind of sounds like ego because like they're worried about what people think. I mean, I don't know. I believe it's. I mean, even I was talking with Brother Suleiman the other day, and uh, you know, especially with how the world the dynamics are changing, these shifts are happening. It's the evidence is piling up. You know,
It's happening
and so
fast as well,
yes, exactly. And like these are unprecedented times across the world. I mean, not just what's happening in the United States, but United States, the things, the geopolitics and stuff that are affecting so many other countries. I mean, and these world leaders, and but yeah. So, um, I mean, that question that doesn't really make sense. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, uh,
Is it,
I think
if there was a chance that it's not going to hit, then we wouldn't have said it is going to hit 100% with all the evidences that we have, like more
that.
than 200, right? Like we have these
Yeah, the
things that
math is just too right. The math
Mhm.
is the proof, and then we, the messenger
It's screaming
also
that it's
said
gonna
that.
happen.
Yeah, and yeah, mashallah, he said like the smoke prophecy. It's gonna happen. The asteroid, and the signs should be enough for people to believe in. It's kind of like the day of judgment. Like, what if the day of judgment doesn't happen? What are you gonna be like? Did you waste your submission? Did you waste your submission? Like,
That's a good
no,
one.
yeah, we shouldn't. That's not a. But
Yeah, like I had even someone saying, brother, like that. When I was talking about it, I said, listen, there are more than 200, data that like multiples of 19, and it's all connected to that specific moment and time, and the name of the asteroid, the number of the asteroid, all the details. Like, why is it that we have specifically for that asteroid all these data, right? And then the person said, like, what if it's not going to happen? And then you would end up having another asteroid 100 years from now with 500 data points like that end up with 19. Like, it's really strange. Like, if we had 1,000 data points which were multiples of 19s, then that person would have said, yeah, but
they would have
in the
said
future
three
maybe it's gonna be
thousand.
2,000.
Yeah,
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 like
yeah, exactly. I
like
would
is
need five
200 not
thousand.
enough? Yeah, if it was two
Exactly.
or three, you would say maybe coincidence. You would say, okay, this is something like, but it's not 10, it's not 20. Even 20 is a lot, like uh, and I always give the example of what is it called, the thing that you throw and it has six sides,
Dice.
yeah, the dice. Yeah, like when you're playing and you throw the dice, if it comes six, you say you're lucky, and you throw it again. Second time it's a six, you say, oh, like this guy is lucky. The third time you say, oh, you're very lucky. The fourth time they're going to start thinking, oh, you have a trick, like you you messed up with the dice, right? Even at the fourth time, the fifth time, and if you do it 10 times, no one is going to believe you. They're going to say, no, this is wrong. There is a problem with the dice with 10 times. And here we have more than 200, and still it's not enough, right? Like if it was 500, they would say, yeah, maybe it's going to be 1,000. Like, so, but you end up having this type of reactions from people, like very silly, unlogical
Hmm.
reactions.
Yeah, I think uh they are more than like a few hundred of those numbers, but I just uh kept it to that because I thought that if we added more, that would actually have the like it would actually have a negative impact, you know, on people's perception of the numbers, because there's a lot of numbers, and then people would say, oh, because you have a lot of numbers to play with, as they were saying, you have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of numbers to play with. You can use this number, you can use this number. So just to keep things at a more believable level, so it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
limit it to just these numbers, and see,
Mm-hmm.
you still have so many, so yeah.
Yeah, actually, you have all these numbers in the Quran, brother. Like
Hmm.
so many going on. Like, and
Yeah,
every
but
time
yeah,
when you
but in
see
the
a new
Quran also,
number,
for example, you have the basic parameters, right? The most critical ones, and you just stick to those, right? I mean, you could use more
mm-hmm.
numbers even, right? But you just stick to the basic, the parameters, which show all of that, right? So we have the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with the smoke. We have
Mm-hmm.
just have the basic parameters. We're taking, and just looking at those, you have so many proofs around that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I mean, it's not something that I guess it's critical for someone's salvation to know when it's going to come. But the thing is, when it does come and they see it and they know that they didn't believe it, I mean, and they look like the fool at that time, right? Not having prepared and everything, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the thing is, like, why would you not accept it, right? I mean, like, like, what's the reason, I mean, if the proofs are there, You know, like what is stopping you from accepting it? You know, if you
Because Dr.
believe,
Rashad mentioned it,
yeah,
because they
it's
don't want to
ego.
leave the hadith. Yeah,
Yeah,
also ego.
yeah.
They have so many reasons not to accept it, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like my brother is one of those ones. Like after showing so many examples, he noted the date, and he made a note on his phone, and he afterwards told me, he said, yeah, I make a note when people say things that are going to happen in the future, and when the time comes, I take out the notes and I show them, like, oh, you said this is gonna happen, but it didn't happen. And then I
Mm-hmm.
laugh at them, he said, like, so, and blind to all those evidences, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, either they're gonna
but
laugh at
still
us or
afraid.
we're gonna laugh at them.
But still afraid, brother, because I can see, like, in every person that I've spoken with, and I gave them those dates and the evidences, like, there's still this thing going on. But what if it happens? Then I'm going to end up being
Yeah,
in a very bad situation.
right.
What if he's right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if I'm not right, then they're gonna live their lives, and everything is gonna be fine
Mm-hmm.
for them. But what if this is really the truth, and then they ending up not being prepared and in this very bad condition, like this? You
Mm-hmm.
can I could, in everyone's face, I could see that clearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, exactly. The thing is, I mean, I find it hard to understand. I mean, I find it hard to accept that God will just I mean, like, if there are people that are sincerely worshiping God alone, that are righteous people, that God wouldn't give them a heads up, on something so major. When you can see in the past, for example, like people who were annihilated, any followers of the messengers, like for example Noah's people or Lot's people. I mean, they were all given a heads up, and they had time to move to safety, right?
Joseph too.
So, hmm so
He prepared.
yeah, so I mean, for people who are truly on the right path, like, it would make sense that God would do the same for them, to have some kind of heads up so they can prepare ahead of time, so they're not, uh, suffering the consequences from the impact. That makes total sense. I mean, besides the mathematical science, which just confirms everything, right? I mean, if you just think about, like, how the messenger of the covenant talks about submission prevailing, and how, I mean, he talks about how it happens shortly after, not long, shortly after, so, but I mean, if you look at all those things, I mean, for the people who are saying, oh, we have to go by quote unquote science, I mean, that's never going to happen, because they're saying there's nothing coming in 100 years. You know, people who say we're going to believe NASA, it's never going to happen. And if something is coming in 100 years, let's say, right, we already have the technology to deflect asteroids. So in 100 years, that technology would be beyond our imagination. So nothing will. Then we can effectively rule out the idea that smoke will ever happen, right? Which goes against the Quran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it
So
just shows. Oh, I was just gonna say, sorry, bro. I was just gonna say, it just shows that
Yeah.
they still have an idol worshiping tendency. They're worshiping humans.
Hmm.
They're poets that speak eloquently, these scientists, and oh, believe us, instead of believing what the messenger told us. Really, what God is telling us.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they don't believe the government. If it doesn't suit them, but if it suits them, they believe them, right? Like, uh, I know a lot of those people will go against, let's say, CDC, right? For which is in the United States Center of Disease Control, which was telling them all kinds of stuff about COVID, right? They wouldn't believe it. A lot of them wouldn't believe it because I know that because like they weren't even closing their mosques and stuff or having social distancing, etc. You know, but they would believe CDC when they say that circumcision can prevent AIDS.
Right, right, yeah. That whenever it's self-serving,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and they would frequently quote CDC. So it's just the same thing. Like I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just you know. I mean, people can hide behind any agency or name. The thing is, I mean, we know now that how corrupt governments can be more than ever. And I mean, we're not talking about a distant government. We're talking about the same establishment. You know, and when it was discovered, what was it? 2019? No, yeah,
What? What was
yeah.
discovered?
When it was discovered, right?
The asteroid, you mean?
Yes.
No, the asteroid was discovered in 2004.
Wait.
2004, brother.
No. Yeah, you're right. But what am I confusing it with? Hold on.
19 June 2004.
maybe maybe
No,
COVID or
no,
something.
no, not the. There was something else that happened in 40 around that time that was related to
Oh,
this.
maybe
When they
they
ruled out, when they,
ruled it out. Yeah.
yeah,
In
when they ruled, yeah,
2021, it came close.
yeah, well, they ruled it out, and yeah, so that's when they ruled it out. Before that, yeah, that
They
was.
said it's not going to hit.
Anyways, yeah, there was
Mm.
something there. Um, I can't think of it right now.
Okay, so it says in 2019, the asteroid Apophis was not a subject of significant concern regarding a potential impact with Earth, while Apophis has been a topic of discussion due to its past close approach to Earth. By 2019, it had become clear that it would not impact the planet
Yeah,
in
yeah, exactly.
2029
So they ruled it out
or
completely.
2036.
Yeah, they ruled it out completely. That will not hit the Earth in that year, particular. I mean, that time in particular, right? So, so that's when he became the president,
Okay.
right? Yeah, correct.
Yes, 30.
Yeah.
They say it
What?
will, Apophis will make a very close
Yeah.
approach to Earth on April 13, 2029, passing within about 32,000 kilometers of the surface. Despite the close approach, scientists, their gods eventually, have confirmed that Apophis will safely pass by Earth and will not impact the planet.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if there are any additional, there are no additional comments or questions, maybe we can conclude the study. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone?
I think Shovel had questions, but I think
Oh, she is.
her internet's not like working too much.
It says Brother Raphael has some questions.
Rafael has question.
You call him Brother Raphael?
No, no, he said, yeah, brother, Rafael has some questions.
Oh, okay. I thought she said, yeah, Brother
There's a
Raphael has
comma,
some questions.
invisible comma there, brother.
Invisible death.
It's invisible. Yeah, I know.
That's why you're supposed to use punctuations.
Mhm.
But we know so. Mashallah. Mashallah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a one I like about grandma. I
Mhm.
forgot what it is. Um, yeah, hold on.
So what does Raphael want to ask?
Grandma
Oh,
Grandma.
punctuation. Yeah, it says let's eat grandma. If you don't put comma between eat and grandma, then it gives the wrong meaning.
Oh yeah, yeah, I get it. Yeah.
There is also one we use in Turkish. It says, um, "Study, don't be a donkey like your father." So you can read it. You can say, "Study, don't be a donkey," and then comma like your father.
Yeah.
Or no, study like your father, comma, don't be a donkey, or study like your father, don't be a donkey.
Mm, yeah.
We use that a
Yeah, I
lot.
shared I shared it from a website, and it
19.
it has 19 names
Yeah.
for punctuation. It says punctuation saves lives.
Let's eat grandma. What? Let's eat, comma, grandma. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. I like cooking my family and my pets. Use commas, don't be a psycho. It's time to eat Bernard, and Bernard is in a pot, cooking pot. Uh, time to eat, children. That's funny.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's just, and there's one about someone's holding a poster saying "No more rape," but they have no
No,
exclamation
no more rape.
with the no.
Hunters,
That looks like
please
a
use
real one.
caution when.
You know.
Yeah, it is probably real.
Yeah.
Hunters, please use caution when hunting pedestrians using walk trails. And there's, oh, funny things, man.
Okay, Brother Suleiman, so the question Sogo had is, can girls do Friday sermons?
Girls can do Friday sermons if there are no men that are part of the congregation, right? If there are other men present, then they can't do it.
Did you hear Sogo?
So if there's only one guy and then five women, so he's going to lead the prayer?
Yes, and he's going
Yes,
to do the
that's okay.
sermon. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
All right, so I guess if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can
Maybe
conclude
there
the
is
study.
one moment.
Oh, there is. I
Yes,
just
there
want to
is.
conclude the study.
Oh, she has, yeah. Be patient.
All right, so the question may be rude. Why would it be rude?
Let's see the question.
I mean, maybe we could conclude and still.
And then, yeah.
We could do that too, Brother Suleiman.
No, it's okay. We can ask
Uh,
ask, ask the question, and then we can conclude, God willing. After that, then we can save the other questions for the next study, God willing. What's the question?
inshallah.
What's one plus one?
So,
Do you know the question, Brother Raphael?
No. Can you ask the kid again? Oh. So, okay, so when you are doing zikr and basically you actually the question is actually yes, you can do it. That's the answer. Sorry. The answer is yes.
yeah, I think she asked me that too, and I told her that
Yeah,
it's fine.
because you don't have to have ablution for doing zikr, the
Zikr,
ablution
yeah,
is
you
only
don't need
for.
to have ablution. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically for the contact prayer salat. So this means that you don't need to have ablution, or if you even had ablution and you, um,
You just need ablution for your contact prayer.
yes, and the ablution is gone while you are doing zikr is not a problem. I think she understood.
Mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah.
All right.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's not about, yeah, it's
Mashallah.
possible. Like we're all humans, so. Oh, do you have another one? Oh no, okay. Is
Is
joking a
joking
part of
part of
lying?
lying?
Hmm.
Joking a part of lying? What do you mean?
Yeah, they say that a joke is
No, it's not
partially
a.
a
It's not
truth.
a. That,
Maybe
no,
something.
no, it's not. A
No,
joke
it's
is
not
a joke.
lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's a good question. I think, brother, you asked that before, right, brother Jaffer, about the
No,
jokes and stuff. It's kind of in the
joking.
similar. Like people think that you can make jokes, etc.
You
Remember we
can make
had that.
jokes, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah,
remember
you
last
can.
time we had that. Someone else had that question. You brought it up.
Yeah,
Something to
bro.
that effect, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I mean, there's many examples from even from the Master of the Covenant, from like the Quran studies they were in, from
He's joking. Oh,
from
now
the
I remember
newsletters
what
and
you
stuff,
mean.
submerged perspectives, Yeah.
Yeah, but the question I asked, it wasn't really about joking. It was making fun out of others,
Yeah, yeah.
because of their
But I mean,
religion.
it was related. It was
Yeah,
just
it was
related.
also related.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, just don't say no yo mama jokes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I also want to say, like, we have another sister who has joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
With sister.
I think it's actually Sorgel's sister.
Or maybe she can't talk now.
Yeah, well, welcome, sister. Anyways, welcome to our group.
Welcome, sister, to the group.
yeah, welcome.
MashaAllah.
All right, mashallah.
Mashallah.
So thank you all for. She's nervous and
MashaAllah.
excited. Okay, mashallah. So
MashaAllah.
thank you all for
Wait,
joining
wait, she
us.
has another question, brother.
No, 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 no more questions.
Yes, brother, another one. Circle, go ahead, sister. Quickly.
Oh, she said this is important.
Okay.
Okay, mashallah.
Yeah. What's the question?
She might be typing, maybe.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, we can conclude the study.
Hmm. The question is, can we conclude the study?
Okay, is it wrong to pray in a place where people drink alcohol, and if alcohol has been spilled on the floor, can prayer be performed in that room?
So the thing is, like, I mean, we have to guide ourselves by a basic principle, right? All the details of our what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do, everything is in the Quran, right? So if things are not spelled out a certain way, for, like situations that these, like for example, like not having ablution for your zikr or etc. Like you have to see, is it in the Quran? No. If it's not in the Quran, then you don't have to follow it, right? So we just have to remember that. So the thing is, God says, I mean, when you do the contact prayer, the place where you're doing the contact prayer has to be clean, right? Now, if there's like, dirt, etc., I mean, it's important to make sure that the place where you pray, it's not dirty, it's clean, right? So you try to clean the place before you pray there, or you put a mat or something, to make sure that you're praying on a place that is clean.
Yeah, so normally, even if you would not do the
Yeah.
prayer, like
Hmm.
you're not going to put your head on a floor which is dirty. You like even
Hmm.
with not praying, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
makes
But I
sense
mean,
to.
yeah. But I mean, alcohol is not a dirty thing. Like,
It'll
um,
evaporate.
you clean with alcohol, right? I mean, it's used as a cleaning agent too, right? It helps kill germs and stuff on the floor, if anything. It's not dirty, dirty.
Now, what about? Sorry to digress, but now what about? Because you had mentioned like with dirt and stuff. Now, if you're outside and due to circumstances and stuff, if you find like some clean sand or soil or something, that's fine, huh?
Yeah, and I
And
mean, it's
you
not
could lay
even
down like a little, like a shirt or something to.
yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, I mean, God does not make it difficult for us. Like, even
Right.
if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have an alternative, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
You
you
can
can
do it
just pray there.
standing. You don't have to. Yeah, but you
Yeah,
can also,
yeah.
like, you
But I
can
mean,
pretend putting your
yeah,
head on the floor.
yeah. But I mean, like, it's not, it's not even like a stringent requirement that the place has to be like squeaky clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not a requirement. The requirement is you need to have ablution. You know,
Right.
and yeah,
Mashallah. Thank you.
yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
God doesn't make the religion difficult for us.
Mashallah.
So, sure. All right. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brother Jaffer, for leading the study. Mashallah. God
Mashallah.
willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at God willing at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. And we also will have a Turkish study, God willing. Uh,
We had yesterday,
last
brother.
yesterday,
Mashallah.
yeah. So God willing, we'll have one next week also.
Next one, inshallah. Also
So if
Friday.
there are other questions, also we can also ask them in the Turkish study.